Good morning. Again, my name is Dr. Tom Duthie, Executive Director of Invex Therapeutics, and it is my pleasure to present to you a summary of the Peptron and Invex collaboration and marketing agreement announced today on ASX. I trust all of you on this morning's call have had a chance to read the release in its entirety, and this presentation has also been lodged with ASX. Suffice to say, we are particularly excited to have signed this agreement with Peptron and the significant benefits for Invex conferred by the deal, including for those important patients who suffer the effects from living with idiopathic intracranial hypertension, or IIH, every day. As you will hear on today's call, the agreement will deliver to Invex significant financial cost savings, an accelerated pathway to phase 3 trial commencement, and a material reduction in the risk associated with alternate manufacturers with no experience in exenatide formulation. And of course, for Invex, this agreement also allows us to bypass a number of lead-in activities that we had planned by utilising Peptron's own preclinical and clinical data. This measurably lowers the risks associated with such activities not delivering as expected if we had contracted with another party, for example. Turning now to slide 2, our disclaimer. It is important for investors to note that today's presentation includes certain forward-looking statements. Slide 3 provides a snapshot of the highlights of the Peptron agreement. I will go into these in more detail in coming slides, but in our view, there are 6 key benefits of this transaction for Invex. Notably, the agreement provides Invex with a long-term strategic partner for the manufacture of Presendin for both clinical development and commercial supply upon future regulatory approvals. From a financial perspective, this agreement is anticipated to save Invex approximately $3 million in lead-in development expenditures while preserving future commercial upside with a fixed cost per dose for supply and no royalties or milestone payments tied to regulatory approvals or commercial sales. It provides Invex with utmost flexibility in commercial pricing discussions with prospective third-party sales and marketing partners in parallel with government or private payers for reimbursement purposes. We believe the transaction will save approximately 12 months of lead-in development that would have previously been required by Invex and significantly lowers this risk by Invex leveraging Peptron's preclinical and clinical data for Invex's regulatory submissions. In effect, we are also leveraging Peptron's expertise in the manufacture of sustained-release formulations of exenatide branded as Presendin for Invex's IIH purposes. As indicated on the schematic, Peptron are financially sound with the ability to produce sufficient quantities of Presendin for commercial supply over the long term. Finally, for patients, Peptron's formulation is ideal in IIH, where dosing will be once per week subcutaneously or under the skin by way of an injection, versus the once per day formulation initially envisaged by Invex as part of our own reformulation activities throughout FY21. Turning to slide 4 about Peptron. As investors will no doubt appreciate, prior to entering into an agreement like the one we have signed today, it was important to establish via due diligence the credibility and the capability of the counterparty, being Peptron, to this agreement. As investors will recall, Invex has held discussions with a number of contract manufacturing organisations, or CMOs, in relation to both the formulation and manufacture of Presendin during FY21. However, Peptron was selected by Invex as the ideal partner given their strong financial position and significant and proprietary manufacturing know-how and expertise in long-acting or sustained-release formulations of exenatide and at a commercial scale. In effect, we were looking beyond a strict CMO contract, but rather a strategic transaction that provides certainty to Invex throughout our planned clinical and regulatory processes. Invex has previously shown exenatide as a twice-daily injection to be statistically significant and clinically meaningful in our own phase 2 study in IIH, which was reported in mid-2020. This gave us the scientific confidence to pursue a strategy of an improved formulation that results in IIH patients requiring less injections and a phase 3 trial under our own orphan drug designations to get our formulation of exenatide, being Presendin, approved. The agreement today fulfills a big part of our group corporate strategy. Founded in 1997 and based in Daejeon, South Korea, Peptron are a long-acting peptide formulation specialist via their Smart Depot technology platform. They are currently undertaking phase 2 studies using a long-acting form of exenatide called PT320 for Parkinson's disease, and to support their clinical and commercial activities have established a 16 square metre Good Manufacturing Practice, or GMP facility for exenatide in Osong, South Korea in 2018. Some pictures of this facility are illustrated. They are listed on the South Korean Kosdaq exchange with a market capitalization of approximately $235 million US and cash of around $56 million US. Slide 5 provides a summary of the agreement signed today. The agreement between the parties is a worldwide collaboration manufacturing and supply agreement for Presendin in IAH for a once per week sustained release exenatide microsphere formulation originally developed by Peptron. Under the terms of the agreement, Peptron have been appointed to exclusively manufacture and supply to Invex for IIH only in all major markets. Peptron gains exclusive commercial rights for Presendin in South Korea for IIH. The contract expires at the later of either the expiry of the last relevant Peptron patents or 10 years following first commercial sale. The key financial terms for the transaction are as follows. A fixed price per dose for supply of Presendin and placebo for all Invex's clinical studies in IH. A fixed price per dose for supply of Presendin for commercial sale by Invex. Importantly, there are no royalties payable by Invex to Peptron on any revenues derived from the commercial sale of Presendin across all markets, and there are no upfront payments or payments tied to Invex commercial milestones. Therefore, Peptron receives the benefit of a manufacturing margin and scale advantages on higher volumes ordered by Invex over time, while Invex has certainty on its cost of goods sold as related to finished goods inventory. This is advantageous when setting pricing in markets where Presendin may eventually be approved, but also in discussions with payers. Suffice to say, the price per dose provides Invex with significant flexibility in these discussions and doesn't provide a drag on the gross to net sales revenue potential as a royalty payment would. Invex will be responsible for the Presendin storage, labeling, and release of this drug product for use outside of South Korea, including clinical trials. Slide 6 provides more details on Presendin as manufactured by Peptron. As mentioned, Presendin is a sustained release formulation of exenatide in a biodegradable polylactic co-glycolic acid, or PLGA, microsphere. PLGA is a well-established formulation solution approved by regulators such as the US Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, for a variety of human diseases. For example, Lupron Depot for prostate cancer. As I already mentioned, Presendin will be manufactured in Peptron's GMP facility in South Korea using Peptron's Smart Depot platform technology. The manufacturing process is highlighted in the schematic at the bottom of the slide. The PLGA microspheres with exenatide incorporated are produced using an ultrasonic spray dryer, which results in microspheres that are homogeneous and size controllable through an ultrasonic nozzle, with each dose consisting of a fixed quantity of exenatide incorporated within these microspheres. The dry powder is then reconstituted in a diluent, mixed, and then directly injected subcutaneously into the patient. It is important to point out that Peptron has completed numerous preclinical, phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials in type 2 diabetes of PLGA formulations of exenatide, such as PT320, and Peptron are currently undertaking a phase 2 trial with PT320 in Parkinson's disease. Peptron originally acquired an exclusive patent license for use of exenatide for neurodegenerative diseases from the US National Institutes of Health, or NIH. The company reports its scientific findings in peer-reviewed publications, including one publication in the prestigious Nature Research Scientific Reports. In undertaking due diligence, Invex was impressed at the quality of Peptron's non-clinical and clinical data package, including chemistry, manufacture, and control, also known as CMC data, which is available to Invex in preparing and submitting its regulatory documentation to support a phase 3 clinical trial. Slide 7 provides a snapshot of the collaboration synergies between Peptron and Invex. Both companies have their own issued patents covering the use of exenatide to treat neurological conditions, in Peptron's case, as they are running a phase 2 trial in Parkinson's disease, and in Invex case, conditions of raised intracranial pressure, or ICP, such as IIH. There is no overlap of intellectual property rights, and in addition, Invex holds several orphan drug designations for exenatide in IIH within the US and Europe, which provides Invex with further market exclusivity for 7 and 10 years respectively. Both companies benefit from each other's regulatory filings via data sharing, while Invex receives access to Peptron's manufacturing expertise and GMP-grade drug product for sustained release Presendin and use of Peptron's preclinical and clinical data package for its regulatory purposes, as I've mentioned. Invex has estimated this agreement will result in savings of approximately $3 million and 12 months of lead-in development activities, which would have been previously required had Invex not signed this agreement with Peptron. As mentioned to investors previously, these lead-in activities related to a rat tolerability study and a human pharmacokinetic or PK study, the results of which may have not necessarily been positive. This agreement bypasses that additional risk of developing our own once per day formulation on a de novo or from scratch basis with alternate contract manufacturers, as Peptron has already undertaken these activities and have characterized their PLGA formulations of exenatide in exquisite detail. Peptron gains exclusive commercial rights for Presendin in South Korea for IH from Invex as part of the agreement, and of course will share in the scale benefits by way of doses provided to Invex as part of any commercial activities upon regulatory approvals. We believe there is significant revenue potential for both Invex and Peptron upon Presendin marketing approval under this agreement, given our assessment that the IH market opportunity exceeds 1.6 billion Australian dollars in the US and European Union, and this indication is growing at 3.4% per annum. Importantly, there are no regulatory approved drugs to treat IH, which is a significant patient and government healthcare burden. And so by partnering with Peptron, we gain the benefits of their manufacturing know-how and expertise coupled with our intellectual property in IH. This makes for a sound commercial proposition with multiple barriers to entry for would-be competitors that may or may not emerge over time. Turning to slide 8, regarding the patient benefits for this sustained release formulation as manufactured by Peptron. We believe the pharmacokinetic profile shown by Peptron is well suited to IAH requirements as defined by Invex's phase 2 pressure study. Fewer injections translates to greater convenience for patients and better compliance. For example, the Invex phase 2 pressure study was twice per day injections of exenatide, which equates to 14 injections per week versus 1 injection per week with a new Presendin formulation. As investors may recall, Invex had previously undertaken initial formulation work on a once per day dose form with third parties. The once per week dosing regimen from Peptron is therefore ideal. Importantly, the Peptron formulation provides a well-regulated initial burst of drug within 3 hours of administration, which may lower intracranial pressure and provide relief more quickly. In addition, Peptron has shown that the sustained release exenatide drug steady state level was achieved much faster than another long-acting exenatide formulation, Bydureon, which is approved for type 2 diabetes, being 10 days versus 35 to 49 days for Bydureon. In addition, there is a sustained maintenance of therapeutic concentration of exenatide achieved with our new formulation of Presendin. We believe this profile within the context of a phase 3 trial as planned, and thereafter, if Invex receives the necessary regulatory approvals, will be of significance to an IAH patient versus a once per day formulation strategy, as we had previously envisaged. Slide 9 has been provided previously to investors and shows Invex's lead-in activities that were required prior to the commencement of the phase 3 study, notably reformulation, tolerability, a human PK study, and naturally the appointment of a manufacturer. As the schematic now shows or highlights, the access to Peptron's preclinical and clinical data on sustained release exenatide will allow Invex to bypass any further reformulation work or refinements, as would have been the case if the company was to enter an agreement with an alternate CMO as mentioned. In addition, Peptron has completed a number of tolerability and human PK studies of their exenatide formulations, which based on our own due diligence and as mentioned, should satisfy regulatory requirements as part of any filing to commence a phase 3 and as part of our regulatory submissions for potential market approvals. With particular reference to the tolerability and PK studies, the bypassing of these studies by utilising Peptron's own data, as mentioned, is expected to save $3 million of additional expenditure and 12 months of additional time. Indeed, as I mentioned at the outset, while there are time and cost savings, the access to Peptron's preclinical and clinical data package significantly lowers the risks associated with having to run these studies ourselves from scratch with an alternate manufacturer with no experience in exenatide formulation. And for us, an unproven formulation that we were required to have tested in animals and humans. So this is yet another benefit of the Peptron agreement for Invex. Slide 10 summary. In summary, the agreement with Peptron offers the following for Invex. Peptron has significant formulation and manufacturing expertise with exenatide and are financially robust. Invex receives the benefit of Peptron's expertise and supply of Presendin at a fixed cost for clinical development and commercial supply. It significantly de-risks Invex's development plan for exenatide in IH with an established formulation, and we are not relying on a de novo approach. Invex can utilize Peptron's extensive preclinical and clinical data package for its own global regulatory submissions. There are significant financial and time savings for Invex in development as well, and as noted. Finally, this lower risk pathway versus signing a CMO with no exenatide experience and where Invex is likely to be a relatively small partner is lowered. This agreement is material for both Peptron and Invex. We've highlighted the patient benefits, but I also wanted to finally touch on the strong economics of this agreement, notably that defined supply price, which provides Invex with flexibility in pricing with our prospective payers upon regulatory approvals. And moreover, Peptron has sufficient capacity to meet volume requirements for Presendin in clinical studies and for potential market introductions. Also, Peptron intend to invest in expanded manufacturing for long-term commercial supply based on a forecast market demand. Accordingly, we are delighted to be embarking on this journey with Peptron and see this as an important long-term relationship for both parties. Turning now to slide 11 on our outlook. Under the agreement signed today, we expect the delivery of the first commercial batches of Presendin from Peptron for a phase 3 trial in Q4 calendar year 2021. Although unrelated to the Peptron agreement, Invex continues to develop and refine in parallel our regulatory strategy. Further to the FDA response on the proposed phase 3 design received in June 2021, and based on expert feedback received, Invex continues to investigate the plausibility of designing a single US and EU clinical trial based on a set of primary and secondary endpoints that may be acceptable to both the FDA and the European Medicines Agency, or EMA. We have undertaken a significant literature review and specific IAH patient data exploration, interpretation, and analysis, which is nearing completion. We call this our feasibility review. We have also convened a number of key opinion leader meetings with specialist expertise in ophthalmology and the FDA to help guide our process and thoughts. The outcome of review and company registration strategy for Presendin is expected to be completed in early Q4 this calendar year, and we expect to commence a single phase 3 trial for registration of Presendin in the first half of calendar year 2022. Finally, slide 12 provides a corporate snapshot. I just wanted to, on this call, remind investors on the fiscal discipline of the company with our 12-month trailing average quarterly cash burn of 0.4 million and our strong cash position of 32.7 million as at 30 June. While we anticipate our cash usage to increase in future periods as we embark on our clinical program in 2022, we are fully funded to complete a phase 3 registration trial in IH with additional financial flexibility to consider new pressure-related neurological conditions for exenatide moving forward, consistent with our strong patent position. The board continues to believe the current enterprise value and market capitalization of the company does not reflect the opportunity ahead for Invex, and we look forward to growing these metrics as we embark on our phase 3 study next year. That concludes this morning's presentation on the Peptron manufacturing agreement. If you would like, please feel free to contact myself or Margie at Invex Therapeutics. And so I would now like to turn the call over to our operator for question and answers. Thank you, Darcy.
Thank you. If you wish to ask a question via the phones, you will need to press the star key followed by the number 1 on your telephone keypad. We'll now pause a moment to allow for any questions to come through. There are no phone questions at this time. I'll now hand back to Mr. Duthie for closing remarks.
Thank you, Darcy. Thank you, everyone, for joining this morning's call, and we look forward to updating you on our regulatory processes as we complete those in early Q4, as mentioned. And again, feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thank you for your time this morning.